Thus far, we've been examining the ETI question as a hypothetical. But what happens if we discover observable ETI? Would it be worrying or would it be exciting? If ETI were discovered, how would this impact us? How should we respond? Maulana Bilal offers the following.
I think a lot of questions excite me. And that's where I think we get comfort in those permissive scholars who thought that if there's a function to this type of inquiry, we should invest accordingly. In terms of like practical utility, are we going to be able to cure cancer? From a materialistic lens, our major concerns would be what resources would we be able to benefit from these civilizations? What concerns might we have in terms of defense? But one of the interesting theological questions that first came to mind with our team when we were exploring this was the theological implications and moral obligation question. That if there is life on other planets, have they received the message? This comes from this imperative in the Quran that humans are tasked with the responsibility of carrying on the work of prophets, that you must carry on the message as far as possible. So if there is ETI, the first question I think from our theological lens would be that how do I fulfill that duty of conveying the message of truth to them? What if they are in fact ahead of us in that respect? What if they've come to us to convey the message as well? There certainly are some practical implications of this question, but I think the first theological question would be the question of spreading divine truth. So this is where then the ethical framework is very helpful. Number one, that we have a sound epistemological framework. Number two, that we have a sound scientific ethical framework by which we answer these questions. And then one can be very comfortable and then, like me, just be very excited by these questions and have a cup of coffee with some friends and discuss the possibility and what would these other prophets on other earths look like and where are these earths? Are they layered or are they within, are they different universes or can we actually reach them?
On that question, Dr. Ihsan also chimes in with the thought that perhaps we could learn from aliens.
Primarily, it would be, for me at least, it would be how could we benefit from that interaction, from the knowledge that that civilization had created. So we have significant problems on the earth: food supply, waste, global warming. I mean, the list goes on of problems that we're trying to solve to help human beings live a better life, a more comfortable life without as much turmoil. I think sometimes a solution that comes from the outside sometimes might be received better. Human beings have their inherent biases. If somebody who looks like us, talks like us, gives us an idea, our tendency is not to want to take it. And you never know, if an alien comes up with a great solution, maybe human beings might be more amenable to it.
As we've heard, Islamic sources place the human being in a uniquely honored place in the cosmos and amongst the creation of God. But the same sources also emphasize that this specialness comes with the responsibility to act morally. Does this understanding of humanity's place in the universe help to create a mindset of epistemological humility and give us a balanced perspective of ourselves within the vastness of the cosmos? Maulana Bilal Al Ansari.
I think it's a wonderful question because it speaks to, I think, the lesson that we find in these verses that God created seven heavens and of the earth they're like, and that He scattered creatures, walking creatures in the heavens and the earth. They all suggest the same idea that the vastness of the universe, there's like a moral to it. And it's a continuous reminder and symbol of our smallness. And then, therefore, also the need to appreciate that if we have any virtue, it comes from that divine favor. And then, lastly, it's a reminder of the need for an epistemic humility, to be humble enough to stay in my lane and say that, yeah, I recognize it empirically, rationally, and revelatorily. There's no way for me to confirm this idea with any certainty. And in science, I think that's a guiding principle that's lacking oftentimes. There's a need for certainty in everything. And there's also a need to be able to establish truth through a very reductionist lens. That if I cannot prove something through the natural, through naturalism, through this reductionist science, which only allows for conclusion through empirical evidence, then I'm not comfortable with truth and falsehood. That there is no truth, there is no falsehood, there's no good or evil. And I think that's fundamentally flawed from our epistemological framework.
Dr. Hassan describes how natural observations lead him back to the creativity of the Creator.
For the Muslim scientists, it's not to stop at the understanding of the creation, but to appreciate sort of the architect, the one who created all of this. So God is never late with the sunrise. He's never late with the sunset. He's never late with the rising of the new moon or the waning of the moon. There are verses in the Quran that tell us to look to the heavens and the stars to gain that inspiration, but then also to look within ourselves. And this is where, as a physician, even when we look microscopically on a moment to moment basis, the incredible things that allow us to be alive, it is quite overwhelming. And then the appreciation of who is actually managing that on our behalf. For the Muslim scientists, it's always bringing us back to the creator. We don't ignore the creation in that process, but we don't stop at the creation.
The final word of this episode goes to Maulana Bilal Ali Ansari. He encourages us to explore the big questions scientifically, and then take a moment to look at the natural world and reflect.
I think in the modern day of technology, we don't look up at space at all. I used to do when I was much younger, to sit on the roof and look at space. Imam Ghazali talks about the idea of i'tibar, reflection, that Islamic civilization was a civilization that was integrative, and it recognized that everything is tied together. And so when you look at the cosmos, or you look at even your everyday life, you look at the leaves falling from the trees, you are able to connect that to the afterlife. You're able to connect that to the metaphysical.
This might just be my favorite episode of the series. And those closing reflections by Bilal Ansari, so simple yet so profound, remind us to pause and to wonder, to consider both the human being and the cosmos as mysteries, and to use the tools of science and religion not in opposition, but in dialogue, to probe those mysteries and uncover glimpses of truth. That spirit of discovery, that fusion of awe and inquiry, is something we desperately need in our lives and in our societies. I hope this series has sparked that curiosity in you, and I hope it has given you a few intellectual tools to continue the journey.